The morning sun spilled through the stained glass windows of St. Mary's Church, tucked away in the quiet suburbs of Chicago. Emerald and ruby shadows danced across the polished wooden pews, painting the empty sanctuary in a soft, sacred glow. I ran my fingers along the edge of the last row, checking for even a speck of dust. None. Good. It was 6 a.m., and I'd been here since 5, making sure every detail was flawless for Sarah's big day. Flawless. That's what Sarah deserved. That's what our friendship had always been about for 20 years. Sarah was the kind of woman who could walk into a room and make everyone stop without even trying. Her laugh was like music, her hair always perfect, her smile enough to make you forget your own worries. And me? I was Emily, her best friend, her maid of honor, the one who made sure her world ran as smoothly as her charm. I didn't mind. I loved it, actually. Being her rock, her organizer, her quiet supporter was my role, and I played it well. I paused by the altar, eyeing the white roses arranged in delicate vases. "These aren't quite right," I muttered, adjusting a bloom that was already perfect. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a text from the caterer about a last-minute menu tweak. I sighed, typing a quick reply. Third crisis of the morning, and the sun had barely risen. But that's what best friends do, right? Especially when you're the maid of honor. Especially when your best friend has been your other half since 4th grade. I smiled, tying a satin ribbon around a vase, remembering that day in 4th grade. Some kid, Jenny Carter, had called me a mouse for being too quiet during recess. Sarah, all of 9 years old, stood up, her ponytail swinging, and told Jenny to back off. She'd had my back ever since. And I'd been her anchor through heartbreaks, exams, and every milestone. It worked. We worked. I moved to the next pew, wiping an imaginary smudge from the wood. The silence of the church wrapped around me, comforting like a blanket. Everything was ready. The flowers, the candles, the programs folded just so. Sarah's wedding to James would be perfect because I'd made sure of it. I could already picture her walking down the aisle, radiant in her ivory gown, James beaming at her like she was the only person in the world. My chest swelled with pride, but there was a tiny pinch of something else, something I couldn't name. Envy? No, that wasn't it. Just a quiet ache, maybe, for something I didn't have. I pushed it away. Today wasn't about me. I glanced at my watch. 3 hours until the bridesmaids arrived. James's groomsmen were probably still at his family's estate in Lake Forest, nursing coffee and laughing over some inside joke. I had time to double-check the hymnals. I moved toward the choir loft, my footsteps echoing softly in the vast space. The air smelled of polished wood and fresh flowers, a mix that felt holy, like the church itself was holding its breath for the ceremony. Sarah and I had planned every detail together, late nights over wine and Pinterest boards. She'd wanted everything timeless, elegant, nothing flashy. Like you, Emily, she'd said once, squeezing my hand. You're my classic, always there. I'd laughed, but her words had stuck with me. Classic. Reliable. That was me. And I was happy with that, wasn't I? I reached for a hymnal, flipping it open to check the bookmarks. My phone buzzed again, probably the florist confirming delivery. I ignored it for now, focusing on the task. One thing at a time. That's how I kept Sarah's world spinning. One perfect detail after another. I closed the hymnal, satisfied, and turned back toward the altar. The light shifted, casting a warm golden glow across the sanctuary. It felt like a promise, like everything was going to be okay. But deep down, that tiny ache lingered, a whisper I couldn't quite shake. I told myself it was just nerves, the pressure of the day. Sarah's day. My best friend's day. I took a deep breath, letting the scent of roses fill my lungs, and went back to work. Everything had to be perfect. For her. For us. The heavy oak door at the back of St. Mary's Church creaked open, shattering the quiet of the sanctuary. I froze, my hand still on a hymnal. No one was supposed to be here yet. The bridesmaids weren't due until 9, and James's groomsmen were miles away at his family's estate in Lake Forest. My heart gave a quick thud. I turned toward the sound, expecting a janitor or maybe the florist with a last-minute delivery. But then I heard her voice. Sarah's voice, echoing through the empty church. "Emily," she called, her tone light, almost playful. My first instinct was to answer, to step out and wave, but something in her voice stopped me. It wasn't the warm, familiar Sarah I knew. There was an edge to it, sharp and unfamiliar. I hesitated, then slipped behind a stone pillar near the altar, my breath catching. The shadows of the stained glass hid me, emerald light pooling at my feet. "And you're sure he doesn't suspect anything?" A man's voice, low and unfamiliar, cut through the air. My stomach twisted. Who was this? James? Please. Sarah's laugh was cold, like glass breaking. He's completely clueless. Thinks I'm his dream girl, the love of his life. Her words dripped with mockery, nothing like the soft way she spoke to James when I'd seen them together. The prenup's already signed. My lawyer slipped in a few adjustments. Once we're married, I'll have access to the family trust within 6 months. His parents won't know what hit them. My heart pounded so hard I was sure they'd hear it. This couldn't be real. Not Sarah. Not my Sarah, who James adored, who spent weeks agonizing over the perfect engagement ring because nothing was special enough for her. I gripped the pillar, my nails digging into the cool stone. The bouquet of white roses I'd been holding slipped from my hands, a single petal drifting to the floor like a silent tear. "What about Emily?" the man asked, his voice closer now. My blood ran cold at the sound of my name. Sarah snorted, a sound so full of contempt it felt like a slap. "Emily? She's harmless. Way too loyal for her own good. She'd never believe I could do something like this, even if you told her to her face." Her words sliced through me, each one a betrayal. She's been so useful, though. Knows everything about James's family. Spills every detail, thinking she's helping me plan the wedding. It's almost too easy. I covered my mouth to keep from gasping. My mind raced, replaying every conversation we'd had over the past year. All those late-night chats about James's family business, his inheritance, his parents' quirks. I'd answered every question, thinking I was helping my best friend build a life with her future in-laws. But I'd been her pawn, feeding her the pieces she needed. My knees felt weak, but I stayed upright, clinging to the pillar. "Then what's the plan?" the man asked. "A year, maybe 2? Long enough to secure the trust fund," Sarah said, her voice smooth, calculated. "Then a messy divorce." Poor Sarah, heartbroken because her husband turned cold and distant. She paused, and I could hear the smile in her voice. "I've already started planting the seeds." A few texts sent from his phone while he was asleep. Some emails drafted from his account. Little things to make him look unstable. My stomach churned. I'd held Sarah's hand through college breakups, stayed up all night when her mom passed, listened to her sob 6 months ago when she thought James might leave her. Was any of it real? Or had every tear, every laugh, been part of this act? "You're clever," the man said, his voice closer still. "You know that." "I know," Sarah replied, and I could picture her smirk, the one she used when she knew she'd won. "Let's get out of here before anyone shows up. I need to play the nervous bride for a few more hours." Their footsteps faded, the heavy door groaning shut behind them. I slid down the pillar, hitting the floor with a soft thud. My bridesmaid dress pulled around me, the pale lavender fabric crumpling like my heart. What do you do when the person you've trusted most in the world turns out to be a stranger? My phone lit up on the floor beside me, Sarah's name flashing. "Where are you, Em? Bridal suite soon. Need my best friend." I stared at the words until they blurred. Best friend. The church felt colder now, the stained glass light no longer warm but harsh, accusing. I wiped at tears I hadn't realized were falling, my hands shaking. The door creaked open again, and I scrambled to my feet, heart racing. Sarah stood in the doorway, radiant in her casual jeans and sweater, the wedding dress still waiting at the venue. "Emily, why are you here so early?" Her smile was the same one I'd known forever, bright and perfect. I opened my mouth, but no words came. She stepped closer, her brows knitting with concern. "You okay? You look like you've seen a ghost." "I heard you," I whispered, my voice barely audible. "Everything. The prenup. The trust fund. Using me." Sarah's expression shifted, so subtle most wouldn't notice. But I knew her face, every flicker, every lie. Or I thought I did. "Heard what?" she asked, tilting her head, all innocence. "Everything," I said, louder now. In a heartbeat, her mask fell, replaced by something cold, calculating, something I'd never seen before. "Okay," she said, her voice flat. "That's unfortunate timing." She stepped closer, her perfume jasmine, the one I'd helped her pick filling the air. "What are you going to do, Emily? Who do you think they'll believe? The perfect bride or the jealous best friend?" Her smile returned, sharp as a blade. "This is just the beginning," she whispered. "You're either with me, or you're in my way." Rain hammered against the windows of Anna's apartment in downtown Chicago, each drop echoing the chaos swirling in my head. 3 days had passed since the wedding that never happened. 3 days since I saw Sarah's face shift from best friend to stranger in the dim light of St. Mary's Church. I sat on Anna's cushioned couch, staring at the city skyline, gray and blurred through the storm. My hands felt cold, even wrapped around a mug of tea Anna had pressed into them. "Drink it," Anna said, her voice gentle but firm. She curled up beside me, tucking her legs under her. "It'll help." I nodded, but the warmth of the tea couldn't touch the ice inside me. "I keep thinking it was a dream," I said, my voice low, almost lost in the rain. "That I'll wake up and Sarah will call, laughing about some dumb thing James did, like nothing ever happened." Anna's eyes softened. "You did the right thing, Emily. Telling James before the ceremony? That took guts." "Did it?" I stared into the amber liquid, watching it ripple. The memory of James's face haunted May's tailored suit perfect, his eyes flickering from doubt to anger to heartbreak as I pulled him aside and told him everything. When he confronted Sarah, her mask slipped, just for a moment, but it was enough. He saw the truth. "He thanked me yesterday," I whispered. "Called to say I saved him from her." "That's something," Anna said, leaning closer. I shook my head. "You don't get it. When he thanked me, I felt guilty, like I'd betrayed her." I let out a bitter laugh. 20 years of friendship, Anna. That's not logic. It's chains." Anna grabbed my hand, her grip steady. "Sarah used him. Manipulated him. She doesn't deserve your loyalty, Emily." My phone buzzed on the coffee table, an unknown number lighting up the screen. I let it go to voicemail, my stomach twisting. "Has she tried to contact you?" Anna asked, her voice cautious. "Not since she screamed at me in front of everyone at the venue," I said, trying to smile but failing. "Said I ruined her life. Hard to come back from that." The phone buzzed again, the same number. Anna raised an eyebrow. "Maybe you should answer." "What if it's James, using a different phone?" I hesitated, then picked up. "Hello." Silence, then a man's voice, vaguely familiar but unplaceable. "Is this Emily?" "Who's this?" I asked, my pulse quickening. "Someone who knows what Sarah's really planning. What she's about to do next." His words hit like a punch. "Check your email in 5 minutes." The line went dead. Anna leaned forward, eyes wide. "What was that?" "I don't know," I said, staring at my phone, then glancing at the laptop on the kitchen counter. "But I think I'm about to find out." 5 minutes dragged like hours. My hands shook as I set the tea down, the mug clinking against the table. When the email notification finally pinged, I nearly knocked the laptop over rushing to it. No subject, no text, just an attachment and audio file. My finger hovered over the play button. "Should I do this?" I asked Anna. She nodded, but her voice was tight. "Be careful." I hit play, and Sarah's voice filled the room, sharp and furious. I can't believe she ruined everything. Everything I worked for. My breath caught. It was her, unmistakable, but the warmth I'd always known was gone, replaced by venom. You underestimated her. The man's voice replied, the same one from the phone. Emily's not as pathetic as you thought. Emily, please, Sarah scoffed. She's been pathetic since we were kids. So desperate for friendship, she'll do anything I ask. Each word cut deeper, tearing at the foundation of 20 years. I'd thought we were equals, sisters in all but blood. She wasn't desperate enough to let you fool James, the man said, a hint of amusement in his tone. This isn't over, Sarah snapped, her voice hardening. I've invested too much time. That trust fund is still in play. The wedding's off, but James isn't as strong as he seems. A few weeks of the right attention, some doubts about Emily's motives, and I've got another plan for his family's company. My hands clenched into fists. Another plan? Anna's eyes met mine, wide with alarm. That's why I need you, Sarah continued. Keep Ethan in line. He gets twitchy when things don't go exactly as planned. The recording ended, and the silence was deafening. Emily? Anna's voice sounded far away, like it was coming through water. What other plan? I said, my voice barely a whisper. She's not done with James. How do you warn him? Anna asked. An anonymous recording? He might think you're making it up. Or worse, that you're obsessed with his ex. I closed the laptop, the screen going dark. I don't know. But I know Sarah. Her habits, her weaknesses, her patterns. I swallowed hard. I thought I knew her heart, but clearly I didn't. If she's planning something else, I need to figure it out. Anna's voice carried a warning. Emily, this isn't your responsibility. Isn't it? I stood, pacing the small living room. I introduced them. I vouched for her for 2 years. Told James he could trust her with his life. Guilt rose like bile in my throat. I helped her get this close. That doesn't make you responsible for her actions, Anna said, standing to face me. Maybe not, I said, my voice steadier now. But it makes me responsible for stopping her. I stopped pacing, my eyes drifting to the rain-streaked window. Who's Ethan? Anna didn't answer, but her expression said enough. This was bigger than I'd thought. My phone buzzed again, another message from the unknown number. Tomorrow, Sarah's meeting Ethan. 2 p.m., Lakeview Hotel Bar. If you want answers, be there. Sit in the back. Don't let them see you. I showed Anna the text. This could be a trap, she said, her voice low. What if it's not? I countered. What if this is my only shot to find out what she's really up to? Anna opened her mouth to argue, but another message popped up. P.S. Check the email attachments. Dig into James's inheritance. Time's running out. I looked at Anna, my decision made. I'm going, I said, my voice firm. Tomorrow, I'm finding out who Sarah really is. The Lakeview Hotel Bar in Chicago gleamed with polished mahogany and soft jazz, the kind of place where million-dollar deals were sealed over $20 martinis. I arrived 30 minutes early, my heart pounding as I claimed a corner table half hidden behind a towering fern. Perfect for watching without being seen. I ordered a soda, the fizz doing little to calm my nerves, and tried to blend in, though I felt like every eye in the room was on me. The bartender slid my drink across the counter with a curious glance. Waiting for someone? He asked, his voice light. I nodded, barely trusting my voice. Yeah. Lucky guy, he said with a wink, moving on to another customer. I almost laughed. There was nothing lucky about this. My hands shook as I clutched the glass, the cold seeping into my fingers. I was here to spy on Sarah, my best friend of 20 years, who'd turned out to be a stranger. A liar. A predator. At 1:55, the door swung open, and Sarah walked in. My stomach clenched. She was flawless, as always, in a sleek black dress that hugged her like a second skin, her blonde hair swept into an effortless updo. She scanned the room with the confidence of someone who knew her worth down to the penny. I sank deeper into my chair, grateful for the fern's leafy cover. Sarah settled at the bar, ordering a sparkling lemonade with a smile that could charm anyone. She checked her watch, casual but precise. At exactly 2 o'clock, a tall man with dark hair strode in, drawing eyes from every corner. He spotted Sarah and crossed the room in long, easy strides, leaning down to kiss her cheek like they were old friends. That had to be Ethan. I pulled out my phone, pretending to scroll through messages, and snapped a few discreet photos. Their body language screamed familiarity, her hand brushing his arm, his head tilting close to hers. Not lovers, maybe, but something just as intimate. My chest tightened. How long had this been going on? The table next to them cleared out, giving me a chance to catch scraps of their conversation. James is vulnerable right now, Sarah said, her voice low but clear. His dad's already suspicious. Security team? Ethan asked, sipping his drink. Sarah's laugh sent a chill down my spine. It was her Real laugh, the one I'd thought was reserved for our happiest moments, late-night talks, shared secrets. William's old and paranoid, she said, leaning closer to Ethan. Thinks everyone's out to get him. But James? He's got one weakness. What's that? Ethan's tone was curious, almost teasing. Sarah's smile was sharp enough to cut. Emily. He trusts her completely. She's noble, just like we thought. My hand froze on my phone. Noble? The word felt like a mockery. What was she planning? Ethan raised an eyebrow. You think you can still use her? I know she'll be right where I need her, Sarah said, her voice dripping with certainty. Like always. They lowered their voices, heads bent over what looked like a stack of papers. I strained to hear more, but the bar's chatter drowned them out. Clinking glasses, murmured deals, a saxophone weaving through the air. My heart raced as I watched them, Sarah's fingers tracing lines on the documents, Ethan nodding. 20 minutes later, they packed up. Sarah kissed Ethan, not a peck but a deep, deliberate press of lips that turned heads. She strolled toward the lobby, her heels clicking, while Ethan slipped out a side exit. I waited until they were gone, my breath escaping in a shaky rush. My hands trembled as I fumbled for my wallet, tossing bills on the table. Whatever Sarah was planning, it involved me. And James. As I stood to leave, my phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. You saw it. Check your email. Security footage from James's place. You need to see it. I froze, the bar's warmth turning cold. Sarah had been in James's house when he wasn't there. Multiple times. This wasn't just about stopping her plan anymore. This was about protecting myself from becoming her weapon. I hurried out, the Chicago wind biting my face as I headed to Anna's apartment, my laptop waiting. Back in the quiet of Anna's living room, I opened the email. The attachment was a video file, timestamped 3 weeks before Sarah's frantic calls about wedding dress fittings. I hit play, and the screen filled with James's sleek Gold Coast penthouse. Sarah moved through it with eerie confidence, like she owned the place. She rifled through drawers in his home office, snapping photos of documents with her phone. Then she crouched behind his desk, placing a tiny Devisea bug, it had to be. My stomach twisted. She slipped into his bedroom, emerging 10 minutes later with a satisfied smirk, typing furiously on her phone. I shut the laptop, nausea rising. How many lies had I swallowed without question? My phone rang, James's name flashing. Emily, did you see it? His voice was raw, laced with anger. Yeah, I said, rubbing my temples as a headache bloomed. I'm sorry, James. Stop apologizing. This isn't your fault. He sighed, heavy and tired. What did you learn at the hotel? I told him everything, Sarah and Ethan, their conversation, her plan to use me. She thinks I'm predictable, I said, the words bitter. That she can manipulate me like always. I don't like this, James said, his voice tight. She's targeting you now, Emily. I know, I said, a plan forming since I left the bar. But that's her mistake. She thinks she knows me, but I know her too. Her habits, her tells. I can use that. Emily, We need to search my house, James said. Whatever she's planted, whatever she's looking for, it could tell us what she's after. I hesitated, the weight of it sinking in. That's risky. Doing nothing's riskier, he countered. She won't stop, Emily. Not until she gets what she wants. Silence stretched between us. Finally, I said, okay. But we do this carefully. Meet me there in an hour, James said. We'll find what she's hiding. I hung up, staring at the laptop. The wedding spreadsheet was still open, mocking me with its perfect rose flowers, catering, seating charts. 3 weeks of my life poured into a day that ended in chaos. I closed the file, my hands steady for the first time all day. Sarah thought she had me figured out. She was wrong. This wasn't just about saving James anymore. It was about proving I wasn't the pawn she thought I was. James's penthouse in Chicago's Gold Coast glittered under the city lights, all sleek glass and modern lines, the kind of place that cost more than I'd earn in a decade. Inside, it felt warmer than I'd expected. Family photos lined the hallway, a half-finished puzzle sprawled across the dining table, human touches in a space that could have been cold. My sneakers squeaked on the hardwood floor, the sound too loud in the quiet. James stood beside me, his shoulders tense, his jaw set. Where do we start? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper, nerves prickling under my skin. The office, he said, his tone clipped. The footage showed her spending most of her time there. He led me down a hallway, past framed photos of his parents' vineyard and a younger James grinning at a graduation. The office was pristine glass desk, ergonomic chair, bookshelves packed with business files, and a few family mementos. Nothing like the chaotic mess I'd imagined. You're tidier than I thought, I said, trying to ease the tension. James forced a half-smile. That's the housekeeper's doing, not mine. He crouched by the desk, running his fingers along its underside. The footage showed her planting something here. I nodded, scanning the room, my heart thudding. The air felt heavy, like the walls knew we were trespassing on Sarah's secrets. I moved to the bookshelves, eyeing the files, wondering what else she'd touched. James's hand stilled. Got it, he said, pulling out a tiny black device no bigger than a button. He held it up, the light catching its smooth surface. This the bug? Looks like it, I said, my stomach twisting. Professional grade. Not some cheap spy gadget. James set it on the desk, staring at it like it might bite. How the hell did she get this? His voice was low, angry. Ethan, maybe? I swallowed, the name hanging between us. Your security team's looking into him, right? Yeah, James said, his jaw tightening. They think he's tied to Apex Innovations, my dad's biggest rival. They've been gunning for our company for years. He ran a hand through his hair, frustration etched in every line of his face. If they get control, they'll force a merger. Get everything we've built. The pieces clicked together, sharp and ugly. That's what Sarah wants, I said. Your shares. Through marriage, she'd have it all. James nodded, his eyes dark. And I'd have handed it to her on a silver platter. I turned back to the desk, my hands moving on instinct, opening drawers, sifting through papers. Something felt off, like the room was holding its breath. In the third drawer, under a stack of contracts, I found Ida's small, leather-bound notebook, out of place among the crisp folders. James, I said, my voice catching. I flipped it open, and Sarah's handwriting stared back at me, neat and deliberate. This isn't yours, is it? He crossed the room, his frown deepening. No. What is it? My heart raced as I skimmed the pages. Notes on James's schedule, his passwords, details about his family's business revenue streams, board members, vulnerabilities. And then, a page about me. Emily trusts her completely. Thinks they're sisters. Knows about the Lincoln Project through casual chats. Loyalty is her weakness. Exploit when needed. My throat tightened, each word a fresh betrayal. She'd been mapping me out, same as James, for months. Maybe years. She's playing us both, I whispered, handing the notebook to James. He flipped through it, his expression darkening as he reached a clipped newspaper article near the back. "There's more," he said, pointing to a timeline. "A planned post-wedding. Contact info for someone at Apex. Dates for board meetings." It was meticulous, ruthless. "She's thorough," I said, stepping back, my voice hollow. "Too thorough." James closed the notebook, his knuckles white. "This is corporate espionage. Hard evidence." His eyes met mine, fierce but steady. "We've got her." Before I could respond, a faint click echoed from the front door, a key turning in the lock. We froze, our eyes locking in panic. "You expecting someone?" I whispered, my pulse hammering. He shook his head, reaching for his phone. But before he could dial security, a voice called out, bright and familiar. "James? You home?" "Sarah." My blood ran cold. James signaled me to stay quiet, pointing to a door I assumed was a closet. I slipped inside, the space cramped and dark, my breath shallow as I left the door cracked just enough to see. Sarah's footsteps approached, confident, unhurried. Through the slit, I watched her enter the office, casual in jeans and a sweater, a one I'd helped her pick out months ago, back when I thought I knew her. "James," she said, her voice soft, almost broken. "I came to apologize." He stood behind the desk, his face a mask of control. "Apologize for what?" "For everything," she said, stepping closer, her eyes glistening with what looked like tears. "The wedding, the things I said it wasn't me. I got cold feet, said things I didn't mean." Her voice cracked, perfect in its fragility. "I love you, James. I've always loved you." I watched James's jaw tighten, but Sarah didn't notice, too caught in her performance. "You still have my key," he said, his tone flat. "Guess that means something." She smiled, reaching for his hand. "It means part of you wanted this. Wanted us." He stepped back, the desk a barrier between them. "What I want is for you to leave." Sarah's eyes flicked to the desk, landing on the bug and the notebook. Her mask slipped, just for a second, her voice sharpening. "What's that?" I couldn't stay hidden anymore. I stepped out, my heart pounding but my voice steady. "Proof," I said. Sarah spun toward me, her eyes wide with genuine shock before narrowing into something cold, calculating. "Emily, of course you're here." Her laugh was brittle, like cracking ice. "Still trying to ruin us." "There is no us," James said, his voice like steel. "And we know about Ethan. About Apex. About everything." For a moment, Sarah stood still, a predator weighing her options. Then her posture softened, tears welling up, her voice trembling. "You don't understand. Ethan threatened me. Said he'd hurt my family if I didn't help him. I was protecting everyone." Her act was flawless. If I hadn't heard her at the hotel, seen the footage, read her notebook, I might have believed her. "Stop lying," I said, calmer than I felt. "It's over, Sarah." Her eyes locked on mine, and in that instant, the tears vanished, replaced by raw, calculated rage. "You don't even know what you've done," she said, her voice low, venomous. "This isn't over. Not by a long shot." She turned and walked out, her footsteps echoing through the penthouse until the front door slammed shut. James let out a slow breath, his hands unclenching. "That could have gone better," he said, almost to himself. I picked up the notebook, my fingers trembling. "She knows we know," I said, the weight of it sinking in. James nodded, his eyes meeting mine, fierce and resolute. "Whatever she's planning next," he said, "it's going to be worse. We need to be ready." The dining room in the Bennett family's North Shore estate felt like a museum, all gleaming chandeliers and polished mahogany. The clink of silverware on fine china cut through the heavy silence. I sat next to James, hyper-aware of my simple black dress, the only thing in my closet formal enough for dinner with one of Chicago's wealthiest families. Across from me, William Bennett sliced his steak with surgical precision, his face unreadable. His wife, Margaret smiled warmly, asking about my job as a wedding planner. I answered on autopilot, my mind elsewhere. This wasn't how I'd pictured meeting James's parents, not as the woman who'd exposed their almost daughter-in-law as a corporate spy. William's eyes finally landed on me, sharp and direct. "Emily," he said, setting down his fork. "James says you've known Sarah since you were children." I nodded, my throat tight. "Since we were 9, yeah. And you never suspected anything off about her intentions?" His question hung in the air, heavy as a blade. "Dad," James warned, his voice low. William raised a hand. "It's a fair question. If she's been scheming against our company for years, there must have been signs." Heat crept up my neck. I set my fork down, the clink loud in the quiet. "Maybe there were signs," I admitted, my voice steady despite the sting. "Red flags I missed because I trusted her, because I wanted to believe she was good." I met William's gaze. "I overlook things. There's a difference." Margaret's voice was soft, cutting through the tension. "It's easy to miss what's right in front of you when you care about someone." William's eyes didn't leave me. "And now, Emily, what do you want from this?" The question caught me off guard. "I don't want anything," I said, holding his stare. "I'm just trying to fix the mess I helped create." His skepticism was palpable, a wall between us. James shifted beside me, his hand twitching like he wanted to reach out but didn't. "Emily found Sarah's notebook," he said, his voice firm. "She overheard her with Ethan at the hotel. She's been crucial to figuring out what we're up against." William's expression softened, just a fraction. "The notebook," he said, leaning back. "My security team's very interested in that." He looked at me again, less cold now. "You understand this isn't just personal. Apex Innovations has been after our company for years. With the information Sarah gathered, they could force a hostile takeover." My stomach tightened. "I get it," I said, my voice quieter now. "Do you?" William leaned forward, his eyes narrowing. "Because my son trusts you completely, and after recent events, I'm questioning his judgment." "Dad, that's enough," James snapped, his voice sharp. "No, it's fine," I said, touching James's arm briefly, grounding us both. I turned to William. "Your concern makes sense. I've spent the last week questioning every moment I ever had with Sarah. Every trust one gave her, every time I vouched for her." I paused, my voice steadying. "I understand your skepticism better than anyone." A heavy silence settled over the table. Margaret broke it, her voice bright but strained. "Who's ready for dessert?" Later, James and I stood on the estate's rooftop terrace, the Chicago skyline glittering in the distance. The cool night air brushed my skin, but it couldn't ease the knot in my chest. "Sorry about my dad," James said, leaning against the stone ledge, his breath visible in the chill. "Don't be," I said, wrapping my arms around myself. "He's protecting his family. His company. I doubt me too." James turned to face me, his eyes searching. "I don't doubt you, Emily." "Maybe you should," I said, the words slipping out before I could stop them. I looked out at the city, its lights blurring through unshed tears. "I didn't really know Sarah for 20 years, James. What does that say about me?" "It says you're loyal," he said, stepping closer. "You see the best in people. That's not a flaw." His voice held something warm, something that made my breath catch. I met his eyes, and for a moment, the world felt smaller, just us and the night. But then his phone buzzed, shattering the moment. He glanced at it, his face tightening. "It's Michael," he said, putting it on speaker. "He says it's urgent." "James," Michael's voice crackled through, no preamble. "We've got a problem. Sarah just filed a restraining order against Emily." "What?" I gasped, my knees wobbling. I gripped the ledge, the cold stone biting my palms. "She's claiming harassment, stalking, threatening behavior," Michael continued. "Says Emily's been obsessed with you for years and fabricated this whole thing out of jealousy." "That's insane," James said, his voice rising. "We have proof: the notebook, the bug, the recording." According to her filing, That evidence is inadmissible, Michael cut in. She claims Emily broke into your house, planted the notebook herself. I was with her the whole time, James argued. She's spinning it as proof of an affair, Michael said, his tone grim. Painting herself as the victim of a setup between you two. The world tilted beneath me. This couldn't be happening. It gets worse, Michael added. She gave an interview to a business magazine. It's publishing tomorrow morning, right before the board meeting. James cursed under his breath. Can we stop it? Not without looking guilty, Michael said. But there's more. The reporter has photos of Emily entering your house multiple times this week. One of them's from the rooftop, right now. I spun around, scanning the shadows beyond the terrace. The neatly trimmed garden stretched into darkness, silent but suddenly menacing. We're being watched, I whispered, my voice trembling. She's setting the stage, Michael said, his voice heavy. Making it look like Emily's been manipulating you, pulling the strings all along. The realization hit like a physical blow. Sarah wasn't just saving her plan. She was framing me, using my friendship with James to ruin us both. What do we do? I asked, my voice barely audible. We meet tonight, Michael said. My office, 1 a.m. I've got an idea, but it's not exactly legal. Anything, James said, his voice fierce. James, come alone, Michael added. No more fuel for her fire. The call ended, leaving us in stunned silence. I stared at the city, its lights no longer beautiful but cold, accusing. She's always been good at this, I said, my voice flat. Playing the victim when she's caught. James squeezed my hand, his touch warm and steady. We'll face this together, Emily. I looked down at our clasped hands, then back to the dark garden where someone might still be lurking, snapping photos to twist into Sarah's narrative. That's exactly what she wants, I said, pulling my hand away. For us to look like we're in this together, like we planned it. So what? James said, his eyes blazing. We know the truth. The truth might not be enough, I said, stepping back, the distance between us feeling necessary. Not against a story as good as hers. In the soft glow of the terrace, I saw something shift in James's eyes, determination, hardening like steel. Then we'll write a better one, he said. And I think I know how. The boathouse at Lincoln Park's lakefront stood weathered and quiet, its wooden beams blending into the golden hues of Chicago's fall. I approached slowly, each step crunching on the gravel path, my senses sharp as the autumn air. Anna's plan echoed in my mind: stay visible, stay safe, let her capture everything. She was nearby, hidden with a camera, ready to turn Sarah's trap against her. My heart pounded, but I kept my face neutral, scanning the empty park. The lake lapped gently against the shore, a deceptive calm. Ethan leaned against a stack of canoes inside the boathouse, his dark hair catching the dim light. He straightened when he saw me, surprise flickering across his face. You came, he said, his voice low, almost impressed. I want to know what you know about Sarah, I said, stopping a safe distance away, my hands shoved in my coat pockets to hide their trembling. He studied me, his eyes narrowing. You're not what she described. How'd she describe me? I asked, my voice steady despite the knot in my chest. Naive. Easy to manipulate. Blindly loyal. He shrugged, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. But you figured her out. That takes guts. 20 years wasted, I said, the words sharp. What do you want, Ethan? A deal, he said, stepping closer, his voice dropping. Sarah's plan is crumbling. Apex is getting nervous, looking for a scapegoat when this blows up. His eyes locked on mine. I don't plan to be that guy. So you're selling her out? I asked, raising an eyebrow. I'm saving myself, he corrected. I'll give you everything, Sarah, Apex, the real players behind this. In exchange, you make sure the Bennetts don't come after me. I laughed, the sound harsh in the quiet boathouse. Why would they agree to that? Because I can save their company, he said, his voice dead serious. Sarah doesn't work alone, Emily. Never has. Before I could press him, the boathouse door creaked open. Sarah stood framed in the entrance, her face a mix of triumph and fury. Her black coat flared as she stepped inside, the door thudding shut behind her. "I knew you couldn't be trusted," she said to Ethan, her voice like ice. Then her eyes flicked to me, sharp and mocking. "And you, Emily?" Predictable as ever. My heart sank, Anna's warning ringing in my ears. This was a trap, just as she'd feared. "You set this up," I said to Ethan, my voice low, accusing. He looked away, almost remorseful. "Nothing personal." Sarah stepped closer, her heels clicking on the wooden floor. "Did you really think it'd be that easy? That Ethan would betray me for you?" Her laugh was cold, cutting. "You're out of your depth, Emily." "Actually," I said, finding my voice steady and clear. I was counting on it. Her smile faltered, just for a second. "What?" "You're not the only one who can set traps, Sarah." I pulled out my phone, the screen glowing with a recording in progress. "And you're not the only one with friends in unexpected places." The door swung open again, and Michael stepped in, his suit crisp despite the late hour. Behind him came James, his face set like stone, and two men I didn't recognize, their postures screaming authority. "Sarah Thompson," Michael said, his voice formal, carrying weight. "I believe you've just implicated yourself in corporate espionage." Again. Sarah's face drained of color, her eyes darting between me and Michael. For the first time, I saw her falter, the confidence she wore like armor cracking. Her gaze locked on mine, cold with hatred. "This isn't over," she whispered, her voice barely audible, but the venom was unmistakable. I held her stare, my heart racing but my resolve firm. "You're right," I said, my voice calm, almost serene. "This is just the beginning." Ethan shifted, his hands raised slightly, like he was trying to distance himself from Sarah. "I told you," he said to her, his voice low. "You underestimated her." Sarah's eyes flashed, but she said nothing, her lips pressed into a thin line. One of Michael's men stepped forward, holding a tablet. "We have the recording," he said, his voice clipped. "Along with the notebook, the bug, and Ethan's testimony to federal investigators." Sarah's head snapped toward Ethan, betrayal etched in her features. "You?" she hissed. He shrugged, unapologetic. "Like I said, I'm not going down for you." Michael gestured to the men. "We'll take it from here," he said, his tone final. "Miss Thompson, I suggest you call your lawyer." Sarah stood frozen, her eyes still on me, a storm of emotions flickering across her faceridge, fear and something else, something almost like respect. She turned to leave, flanked by the men, but paused at the door. "You think you've won," she said, her voice low, meant only for me. "You have no idea what's coming." I didn't flinch. "I'll be ready," I said, the words carrying a strength I hadn't known I had. The door closed behind her, the sound echoing in the boathouse. James stepped closer, his hand brushing my arm. "You okay?" he asked, his voice soft, concerned. I nodded, but my hands were still shaking, adrenaline fading into exhaustion. "I think so," I said, my voice quieter now. "But she's not done, James." "You heard her." Michael joined us, his expression grim but satisfied. "We've got enough to bury her," he said. "The recording, Ethan's cooperation, it's damning. But she's slippery. We need to stay sharp." I looked out at the lake, its surface rippling under the afternoon sun. Sarah had always been a step ahead, her plans layered like a chess game. But today, I'd moved first. And for the first time, I felt the weight of her shadow lifting, just a little. "Let's go," I said, turning to James. "We've got a board meeting to prepare for." He nodded, his eyes steady on mine. "Together," he said, and I felt the promise in his voice, a tether in the storm. The private chapel on the Bennett estate in North Shore glowed with morning light, stained glass windows casting sapphire and amber patterns across the stone floor. I paced the small sanctuary, my footsteps echoing in the stillness. In less than an hour, everything would change. My phone buzzed with a text from Anna. You ready? Was I? Michael's plan was a gamble. If it failed, Sarah would walk free, still dangerous enough to hurt the Bennetts. If it succeeded, I wasn't sure I was ready for that either. The chapel door opened, and James stepped in, his face tense but focused. He'd been distant since the boathouse, all business consumed by the plan. Everything's set, he said, keeping a careful distance. Michael has the documents. The board's on their way. I nodded, words caught in my throat. You don't have to do this, he added, his voice softer now. We've got the boathouse recording, the notebook, Ethan's testimony. You could walk away. No, I said, meeting his eyes. I need to finish this. My voice grew stronger. For 20 years, Sarah made me believe I was lucky to have her friendship, that I was the one who needed her. I have to be there when she faces the truth. James held my gaze, a flicker of something warm in his eyes. You're not who I thought you were when we met, he said. And that's a good thing. Before I could respond, the door opened again. Michael stepped in, his face serious. It's time, he said. Sarah's here with her lawyer. My stomach tightened. Here we go, I whispered. Michael led us across the estate's manicured grounds to the main house. Memories of Sarah flooded my mind, shared secrets in grade school, late-night talks in college, her laughter at my birthday parties. 20 years, built on a foundation I now saw was fractured from the start. The Bennetts' formal living room felt like a courtroom, with William at the head of a long table, board members seated like judges. Sarah sat to one side, her lawyer sharp in a tailored suit. She didn't look up as we entered. Michael gestured to a chair across from her. I sat, and Sarah's eyes finally met my cold, calculating, no trace of regret. Thank you for coming, William began, his voice steady. We're here to address allegations of corporate espionage against Bennett Technologies. Sarah's lawyer leaned forward. My client maintains these accusations are false, fabricated by Ms. Reynolds out of jealousy and obsession. We have evidence beyond Ms. Reynolds' testimony, Michael said smoothly, placing a file on the table. Financial records showing payments from Apex Innovations to an offshore account linked to Ms. Thompson. Emails between Ms. Thompson and Apex executives, dating back 18 months. He paused, letting the weight settle. And most damning, Ethan Carter's testimony, outlining the entire operation. Sarah's composure cracked, her eyes flashing. Ethan would never. Mr. Carter secured a plea deal with federal investigators yesterday, Michael interrupted. In exchange for full cooperation. The room fell silent, the air thick with the gravity of his words. This wasn't just corporate games anymore, it was federal. Sarah's lawyer whispered urgently in her ear, her face paling. Before we proceed, Michael continued, Ms. Reynolds has requested to address Ms. Thompson directly. This was it. I stood, my legs steadier than I expected. Sarah, I said, my voice clear, cutting through the quiet. For 20 years, I thought you were my best friend. I trusted you with my secrets, my fears, my loyalty. Her face was a mask, rigid and unyielding. But this was never about friendship. You used me, planned every moment to exploit me. You're being dramatic, Sarah said, her voice tight. This is about James, and you know it. No, I said, firm. This is about us. About how you turned our friendship into a weapon. I reached into my bag and pulled out a worn diary, its edges frayed. Sarah's eyes widened, recognizing it. Your diary from senior year, I said. The one you left at my house. Where you wrote about befriending the quiet girl whose dad worked at the university because she was desperate and useful. Murmurs rippled through the room. Sarah's lawyer gripped her arm, but she shook him off. You kept that, she asked, her voice barely a whisper. I found it last week, I said, my voice softening. Thought it might mean something to you. I opened it to a marked page. You wrote, Emily's so grateful, she'll do anything I ask. Too easy. The words hung heavy. For the first time, I saw fear in Sarah's eyes, not remorse, but fear of her carefully built image crumbling. "We were kids," she said, dismissive. "Everyone's cruel then." "You just got better at hiding it," I said, closing the diary. I turned to the room. "I'm not here for revenge. I'm here because Sarah Thompson spent her life manipulating people for her own gain. She targeted James, his family, and used our friendship to do it." Sarah shot to her feet. "This is absurd. You have no proof, just a teenage diary." "Actually," Michael said, pressing a remote. Sarah's voice filled the room, sharp and damning from the boathouse. "You set this up. It's nothing personal." "Then mine. You're not the only one who can set traps, Sarah." The recording ended, the silence deafening. William cleared his throat. "Miss Thompson, this meeting is over." Sarah's lawyer gathered their papers, whispering frantically, but she ignored him, staring at me with a mix of hatred and grudging respect. As she passed my chair, she leaned close. "I never thought you had it in you," she whispered. "It was always in me," I said, meeting her gaze. "You just never looked." She walked out, the door closing with finality. For the first time, I felt the weight of her betrayal lift, just enough to breathe. Steam curled from my tea as I sat on my Chicago apartment's balcony, the city waking below in a soft hum. The morning air carried the promise of rain, fresh and hopeful. For the first time in weeks, I'd slept without dreams of Sarah, her betrayal, or the cold hatred in her eyes when her world collapsed. My phone buzzed with news. Apex Innovations CEO resigned amid an espionage scandal. I smiled faintly. The dominoes were falling. A knock at the door broke my thoughts. Through the peephole, a delivery worker held a small package. "Emily Reynolds?" she asked as I opened the door. "That's me," I said, signing for it. The package was light, my name scrawled on it, no return address. I set it on the counter, suspicion prickling. After everything, paranoia felt like a friend. Curiosity won. Inside was a USB drive and a note. "You deserve to know everything. Ethan." My hands trembled as I plugged it into my laptop. A single video file. I hesitated, then clicked play. Sarah appeared in a hotel suite, sipping wine, talking to someone off-screen. "Emily's perfect," she said, her voice casual, cruel. "She trusts me completely. Through her, I get to James without suspicion." "You sure she doesn't suspect?" Ethan's voice. Sarah laughed. "Emily? She's lived in my shadow forever, grateful for scraps." I shivered, but kept watching. Ethan asked about our past. Sarah's face softened, just for a moment. "We were real friends once," she said. "Before I learned people are just assets or obstacles." The video ended. I sat still, her words echoing. Even knowing her lies, that hint of regret stung. The doorbell rang again. James stood there, holding coffee and a bag of pastries, the scent of cinnamon warm and grounding. "Figured you'd need breakfast," he said, stepping inside. We moved to the balcony, the city stretching before us like a fresh start. "I'm selling my wedding planning business," I said, the decision spilling out. James looked surprised. "Why? You're great at it." "I've lived for other people's dreams," I said, turning to him. "I want to find mine." He nodded, his eyes steady. "Good place to start." My phone buzzed an unknown number. "When you're ready for the whole truth, not just Ethan's version, you know where to find me." "Sarah." I stared at the text, a mix of anger and curiosity flickering. James read my face. "Sarah?" "Yeah," I said, deleting the message. "Doesn't matter now." For the first time, I meant it. I'd spent 20 years orbiting Sarah's sun. Now I'd find my own light. "Watching birds soar between skyscrapers," I said, "the weirdest part? When she tried to break me, she set me free." James's hand found mine on the railing, warm, steady. Not a promise, but a possibility.